Now let's check in on Kenya's banking sector. And this time next week, the country's Chase Bank will have been in receivership for a year. Its a shock entry into receivership on April 7, 2016 came just 24 hours after its managing director and chairman stepped aside amid protests that all was well. Now this week, Kenya's central bank and its receiver manager, the Kenya Deposit Insurance Corporation, have announced they're looking for a buyer to take over Chase's assets and liabilities. Now, hopefully within the next 6 months, they expect that to happen. But with Kenya having imposed rate caps on retail lending rates last September and an election barely 2 months away, is Chase an attractive proposition? Well, let's get more on this. Sunil Sanger, he's the MD of Orion Advisory, joins us in the studio now. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
Well, answer the question that we just asked. Is Chase an attractive proposition?
Well, definitely the banking scenario in Kenya has undergone a change over the last few months. So overall, the sector looks less attractive than it was at this time last year. Given that Chase Bank had an attractive franchise, good spread of branches, 62 branches. So it does present an attractive option for a new entrant coming into this market to step in and get a head start rather than starting from scratch. Yes, definitely it is still an interesting option, but much less than it was a year ago. Yeah.
Now, let's talk about the bank itself. We know the governor, he seems pretty optimistic about Chase Bank. He said that the receivership would end at the end of this month, actually, March 2017. He's extended the receivership now. He's put out also expressions of interest for the bank. What is your take on all that's going on around the bank right now?
Well, it is disappointing. I think from the previous announcements, an expectation had been built up that there would be a resolution by the end of March and depositors should expect the bank to open thereafter. The expression of interest that has been invited yesterday throws up now a completely new timetable. I think the central bank has now announced that they expect a deal closure by the end of September, which is 6 months away. If there is no slippage in the timetable and there are no legal challenges to the process, it is a challenging timetable. And even if deal closure does happen by September, it would be probably first quarter of 2018 that we can really expect the bank to reopen.
Now, this time last year, the central bank had said Chase had seen about interest from offers rather, from 6 local banks and 2 foreign banks. We also heard that Kenya Commercial Bank was showing some interest. Of course, it's the manager now. What is your take on the interest out there? Is there interest for Chase Bank right now? Well,
it's definitely bound to have been diluted. At least the local banks for the last 6 months have all gone into shrinking their balance sheets, going into restructuring, reducing their branch networks. So I can't imagine that there would be 6 local banks that would be interested. Again, the 2 largest banks, Kenya Commercial Bank and Equity Bank, have faced challenges with their offshore operations, particularly with what has happened in South Sudan.
Right.
So again, I think they seem to be in consolidation mode. I would be surprised if there are more than a couple of local banks who are interested at this stage. Again, don't see too many European or American banks being interested. If there is likely to be interest, it's to be more from Middle Eastern or Asian banks.
And how do you see this affecting the value of the bank, of course taking into account all that has happened?
Well, value, I don't think the existing shareholders really can expect to receive anything. So it's really a question of what terms the new bank comes in, whether they are willing to open for depositors immediately on coming into the market, what support they would expect from existing institutional investors as well as lenders. I think those will be the kind of terms that would really would really come out in the bids that would be received and that would be negotiated with the central bank.
Now, I'd like to get your take on the overall banking sector. Has confidence started coming back into the sector? Of course, taking into account the events of last year, we saw 2 other banks also closing their doors. So are we seeing confidence finally returning?
Well, I think this past week we have seen most of the banks declaring their results, though some of the larger banks declared the results earlier. And the results don't look pretty,
That's
We
right.
have seen
With the caps as well.
most banks having declared reduced profits. There are 4 to 5 banks which have actually shown losses. There are banks which are struggling with capital adequacy or with liquidity ratios. So I think this is going to be a challenging year and a difficult year for the banking sector in Kenya. So I think we are in for some more turbulent times in the banking sector.
Interesting insight there. Well, thank you so much for joining us in the studio. Of course, Sunil Sangar, he's the MD at Orion Advisory.